Yeah, I mean, I think first we have to understand when we say spiritual, what does that mean, right? I mean, that's because when you use the word spiritual in an organization, they can conjure up, we have filters. So what conjures up in someone's mind when you talk about spirituality in the work environment, right? Typically, spirituality is not linked to values. They think it's something different, but in fact, that's what we're talking about. So there's this difference between the human being and the human body, right? The body is a physical reality. The human being is a spiritual reality. So I think if we can make that, now some may argue otherwise, that's okay. But I think if we are able to make that distinction and say there's this part of me that's distinct yet integrated with my physical body, and I need to understand that. That's where trust comes in. That's where this need to serve others comes in. That's where honesty comes in. That's where truthfulness comes in. It's not my human body that's telling me I'm going to be truthful. It's something else. So if we consider that to be the spiritual reality and connection to things that perhaps we cannot explain in a physical way, in a scientific way, okay, then we can start from that point and say, all right, then if that's spirituality and that part of me needs to be reflected in my life and in my work, then we can begin to give definition to that. What does it mean? How do we integrate that? Because the great one, I think one of the greatest challenges in organizations today in that context is the conflict between who I am and what the corporation wants me to be. Right? And I go through my life bouncing back and forth. Creates conflict, creates tension, right? Not alignment, right? Because my values are different from the corporation's values, or my values may be the same as the corporation's values, but the corporation is not living its values. It talks about integrity as being a core value to our organization, but you only offer a discounted wireless product to new customers and not to me. And I've been with you for 10 years. So you're telling me that's integrity? I, as a consumer, am thinking that way, right? Because the corporation has not defined what integrity means. Because if it does, it's going to have to live up to it. Right? So there's this conflict for me at work. And I think once we begin to understand that there is a spiritual reality that's common across that, because the corporation is a composition of people. People are the most common denominator in all things. We're the ones that design products and services. We're the ones that design the machines that build the products and services, etc. So we have to have alignment between the purpose of the person, my spiritual reality, my values, and the spiritual reality of the organization and the values of the organization. And once we achieve that alignment, once, following, having clarity around our purpose, the unity is achieved. And then we can start talking about, okay, what's the execution plan? There's a global financial institution that has instituted a once-a-month meeting of teams of 9 people. Right? And in that meeting, the purpose of the manager is to create the environment where those participants can express themselves freely about any subject. It's not for them to respond. It's not for them to get defensive. Create the environment where the participants can express themselves. And then there is kind of the social aspect of it, where after they're finished, they have they have tea, they have coffee, and there were teams that said, no, well, we've only got 45 minutes. It's supposed to be an hour. We don't have the time to do the social part. No, it's important to have the social part because that's an integral part of the transformation, building trust, relationships, etc. And this happens once a month. This organization has 300,000 employees, and 90,000 people are now going through this. Here's a situation where the CEO of this financial institution does this once a month and says it is the best hour of every month that he has. Right? In that way, you begin to create alignment between what's important to me and what's important to the organization. The common theme, which is fascinating, the common theme is not, I don't like the coffee machine or the water cooler doesn't work properly. The common theme is, how do we make things better? That's the common theme. How do we make our customers happier? How do we make our products better and safer? Specific situation. Large company, global, about $6.5 billion of revenues, 37,000 employees worldwide. There's an operations team that manages operations for the entire enterprise. And it's given a mandate to reduce operating expense. We know what that means, right? It's redundancy, it's reduction in force, etc. That's one piece of information is important. Second piece of information. The leader of this group had worked very hard to create a culture of inclusion and a culture of enablement, very much based on values. Integrity, honesty, trustworthiness, the expression of love at work, what does it mean, etc. So when this mandate came, the leadership team is sitting down and saying, what do we do? They had conversation, they had consultation, and they said, times are tough. We don't want to let anyone go. It's going to have a significant impact on their personal life. How about if we all take a reduction in pay, in compensation? So you had a combination of salary, bonus, grants, and stock options, right? The team said, yeah, we'll do that. Couldn't reach the number. So how about if we go out to the next level in the organization and see if they'll do it? Okay. Conversations took place. Consensus, yes, we're going to do this. We reached the number. Prepared a presentation, proposal. The team went to the executive and said, here's how we're going to reach the number. And there was dead silence in the room. Oh, no. What do you mean? So, well, you want the number reached, that's how we're going to do it. We'll continue the work. We don't have to re-engineer in order to achieve a number. We'll continue to deliver value to our clients internally and externally, and we're able to maintain the positions. And we're actually going to achieve a higher level of commitment, loyalty, camaraderie, et cetera, et cetera. Final answer was no, because it's unprecedented. If we do this, it's going to have a certain amount of risk and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the answer was no. So that's an example of how I think what I learned from that story is you have to have the courage to face the consequences of living your values. And there was a lot of disappointment in that group. They were so elevated, if I can use that word, as a community within the organization. They were so proud that there was consensus. And it was a huge dive, it was a letdown for that group. It became quite emotional. So, but that's an example of knowing what the right thing to do is, right? I mean, you're not going to see a CEO go to a quarterly conference and say to the shareholders, to the analysts, to the street, I have a choice. Either I let 5,000 people go, or I reduce the earnings per share or the dividends per share by 2 cents, 5 cents, whatever the number is. You have not heard that.